When most folks talk about ammo, they tend to lump everything together and call them bullets or shells. But if you've spent any time on the range or at the reloading bench, you know that's not quite accurate. What we're actually talking about is a cartridge, a fully self-contained package that includes a brass casing, a projectile, a primer, and a carefully measured charge of powder. Without all four working in harmony, you don't have a functioning round. A lot of the cartridges that shooters know and love today have roots deep in military history. Take the 45-70 Government, the 45 Colt, the 45 automatic Colt pistol, or the 9mm Luger. They all started their lives as military-issued ammunition before becoming staples in civilian shooting. These rounds didn't just appear in gun store shelves by accident. They were battle-tested before they became range favorites. Now, here's where it gets interesting. One of the most dominant military cartridges in use by our armed forces and by many NATO allies actually started out as a civilian round. That's right. I'm talking about the 2.3 Remington, which eventually evolved into what we now call the 5.56 by 45mm NATO. That's a reversal of the usual story: military rounds becoming civilian, not the other way around. The 2.23 Remington first gained attention in the civilian market before being adopted for the AR-15 rifle platform. Once the U.S. military brought it into service, they rebranded it as 5.56 NATO. That change in name and a few subtle tweaks sparked decades of confusion among new shooters. Even now, I get questions almost every week from folks wondering, are the 2.3 Remington and 5.56 NATO interchangeable? What's the difference? And why did they bother changing it in the first place? Part of the answer lies in history. In the late 1970s, specifically 1979, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization decided to standardize rifle ammunition across its member nations. The logic was simple. If soldiers from different allied countries were fighting side by side, they should be able to share ammo without compatibility issues. The official designation became 5.56 by 45mm because NATO uses the metric system. In essence, it's just the metric name for the 2.3 Remington. But there's more to it than a new label. The military version of the cartridge has a slightly different chamber specification, runs at a higher pressure, and is often paired with projectiles designed for better penetration at range. Those differences are enough that while you can safely fire 2.3 Remington in a 5.56 chamber, doing the reverse, running 5.56 NATO in a rifle marked only for 2.23, can be risky if your gun isn't built to handle the extra pressure. So the next time someone shrugs and says, "It's all the same," you'll know the truth. Whether you're talking military or civilian, every cartridge has its own story, and the 2.23 Remington's journey to becoming the 5.56 NATO is one of the most unique in modern firearms history. Today, we're dealing with a cartridge that comes in two flavors, the 2.3 Remington and the 5.56 by 45mm NATO. At a glance, they look identical, same bullet diameter, nearly the same case dimensions, and on paper they seem interchangeable. But as with a lot of things in the gun world, the devil's in the details. And yes, those details matter sometimes a lot depending on both your rifle's chamber and what kind of shooting you plan to do. Most modern AR-15 rifles roll off the line with a 5.56 chamber. That chamber is cut just a bit more generous than a dedicated 2.3 Remington chamber. The biggest difference is in the throat, the short section of the barrel just ahead of the chamber where the bullet rests before engaging the rifling. In a 5.56 chamber, that throat is a little longer and slightly wider. That extra room is there to safely handle the higher pressures of military spec loads. Because of that design, running 2.3 Remington ammunition in a 5.56 rifle is perfectly safe and won't cause any issues. But the reverse, that's where you can get into trouble. Dropping a 5.56 NATO round into a rifle chambered strictly for 2.3 means that higher pressure is now being generated in a tighter space. You might get away with it a few times, but it's a gamble that could damage your gun or worse, so it's not worth the risk. Now, if you set these two cartridges side by side, the differences are subtle to the naked eye. One thing you can't see without cutting them open is that 5.56 NATO brass has slightly thicker walls inside, which helps it contain that extra chamber pressure. If you look very closely at the exterior, you'll also notice the shoulder of the 5.56 case is just a hair more pronounced and a touch larger. That small change means the bullet sits ever so slightly farther forward in the case. In the examples we've got here, both projectiles are 55 grain, full metal jacket, designs the classic ball ammo you'll find in bulk packs all over the country. Where things really start to separate is in velocity. That 2.23 Remington load we're holding here clocks in around 2,900 feet per second at the muzzle. The military 5.56 version, loaded to higher pressure, screams out of the barrel at roughly 3,180 feet per second. That extra speed is part of what gives the NATO round its flatter trajectory and improved terminal performance at longer ranges, but it's also the reason why chamber dimensions matter so much. So while they might look like twins sitting on the bench, the 2.23 Remington and the 5.56 NATO are more like cousins, close enough to be familiar, but different enough that you need to know exactly what your rifle is built for before you start sending rounds downrange. So what does all of this actually mean when you're standing at the ammo counter? If you've got an AR-15 chambered for 5.56 NATO, here's the short version. If you're chasing the tightest possible group, say, trying to stack 20 rounds into one ragged hole at 300 yards, you'll want to stick with true 5.56 loads and test a variety of bullet weights to see which your rifle prefers. If you're just out for a fun day at the range or doing casual plinking, you can run either 2.23 Remington or 5.56 NATO. In that case, my advice is simple: buy whichever is easier on your wallet. Now, if you're shooting a bolt-action rifle that's chambered strictly for 2.3 Remington, the rules change. Avoid 5.56 ammunition. Sure, you might get away with it for a while, but the higher pressures from that NATO load in a tighter 2.23 chamber are asking for trouble. Stick with proper 2.3 Remington, and you'll be perfectly safe. There's also a third option worth mentioning, the 2.3 Wild. This isn't a cartridge, it's a chamber design that blends the accuracy potential of a tight 2.23 with the pressure tolerance of a 5.56. If your rifle wears a Wild chamber, you can safely run either cartridge without compromise. Over the years, this family of cartridges has grown far beyond the original 55 grain bullet. Today, you'll find everything from 62 to 68, 69, 75, and even 77 grain projectiles, each bringing its own strengths for long-range work, hunting, or specialized competition shooting. That's a whole conversation of its own, and we'll be diving deeper into bullet weight evolution in a future video. For now, I hope this breakdown has made the key differences between these two cartridges clear and shown why chamber markings matter. In short, 5.56 chambers can run both. 2.23 chambers should stick to their own, and Wild chambers give you the best of both worlds. That's going to wrap it up for this one. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Stay safe, shoot straight, and we'll catch you next time.